Hello, beautiful souls. Today's episode is so good. And before we jump in, I have some exciting news to share. If you've ever wondered where you're blocking money, this is for you. I've created a free quiz to diagnose your money wounds so you can heal them and unblock yourself to receive more money. Just go to moneywoundsquiz.com and answer 6 quick questions to get your insanely accurate and potent results. And if you're loving my vibe and want to work one-on-one to call in more feminine energy wealth, I would love to hear from you. You can shoot me a DM on social media or go to emilywilcox.com to learn more. Hello, and welcome back to the Makes Money show. You guys, this is so wild, but yesterday I was on a proposal meeting with a potential agency client, and he asked us how much total revenue we manage across the Amazon channel across all of our brands. I'm like, I have no idea. I'll have to do some math and get back to you. And someone on my team who was on the call did the math, and she sent me a Slack message, and I was totally blown away by the number. So in 2022, across all brands, we created and managed $18,136,698 in revenue. Wow. Wow. I still remember 5 years ago, starting this agency, and, the types of clients that we were finding or engaging with, like, were small. They weren't on Amazon at all. They were just wanting to start a brand. They were, maybe doing $10,000 a month. And the fact that we're now managing over $1 million a month in revenue is just wild. And it's such a testament to just keep going, just keep building, trust in the compound effect, because I wasn't even dreaming that big 5 years ago. Frankly, it was like, we need clients so that we can make some money and I can stay at home with little baby Jude. And of course, we wanted to do good work for them, but we were a match for smaller clients, and that was okay. And over time, our agency has grown. We've hired better people on the team. We've refined our sales and marketing, and now we're a match for bigger brands. And we're managing over $18 million a year. And that was last year. So who even knows what it's going to be this year? It might be closer to 50 million. And we just are going to continue growing over time. And can we keep going? And can we trust in the growth and evolution that is natural as a part of the human experience, and just keep doing the damn thing? So that was my exciting, mind-blowing moment. I also just wanted to share a couple exciting opportunities in case it's something that resonates with you. Number one, my Fruition container, which is my one-on-one mastermind hybrid, is closed for enrollment until essentially in June. Enrollment will reopen, but you won't join until the very end of June. There's a bonus retreat at my house, and then you'll be in the mastermind one-on-one container from July to December. So it's a 6-month container. Now, that said, even though it is closed, there are people who reached out to me who are on the interest list who are like, I'm going to join as soon as it opens again. And I decided to put in place a really beautiful bonus. If you know that Fruition is right for you and you know that you want to do it on the back half of this year. So what you can do is you can pay a deposit to secure your spot. The deposit is just $1,111. So it's just the same as a first payment. And then once you pay the deposit, you get to be in all of my group programs leading up to the time when you're in Fruition. So you can already be immersed in my work. You can get access to all of the incredible live programs that I'm doing on things like, balancing masculine and feminine energy and embodying the feminine energy CEO. And we're going to be doing soulful sales, which is all about really having more sales discussions, more sales dialogue, showing up more unapologetically to sell, but doing it in a way that doesn't feel icky. And there are so many others as well that I just can't think of off the top of my head. So if you've been wanting to do Fruition, slide into my DMs, let me know, and you can take advantage of that bonus by locking in your spot for the second half of the year. The other thing is that I am calling in my next Lux private coaching client. So my Lux private coaching is what used to be like my VIP one-on-one. So same thing, different name. It's where you get everything. You get retreats, you get a private call every week, you get private Voxer access, you get to be in all of my live programs. It's really for the woman who wants to have it all, who wants to go deep, who wants to really have me doing life and business with them in a very intimate way, and really amplify, alchemize what they're doing in life and business, and 10x, 20x, 50x, who knows, the results of what they're doing, and to do it in a way that feels more joyous. Like I always talk about walking the joyous path to millions, and it really is true. So the destination is important, the money is important, but also how you feel along the journey is equally as important. So that investment level, it's $15,000 for 3 months, or it's $55,000 for the year, and that can be paid monthly as well. So if that's something that you're interested in, if you're like, that spot is mine, reach out and let me know. I have an incredible interview for us today with Pandora Paloma. She is, first of all, she's British, so she has like the cutest accent, which is so fun to listen to. But she's an author, she's a 6-figure coach, she's a magnetism activator, and really she sees her role as guiding spirited visionaries into multidimensional wealth at the place where strategy meets spirituality. And I can so resonate with that, because I definitely feel like I love the intersection of strategy and woo-woo, and like they're both important, they're both needed. And Pandora is just an incredible human, and we get into just some really cool things around money and around using your voice and stepping into being a thought leader and what that takes. And without further ado, I'm just going to let you jump in, because you're going to love this interview. Pandora Paloma, welcome to the show. I'm so happy that you're here.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure.
Yeah. And you just told me that you had a 21,000 pound day.
Yeah, no biggie. I'm in the kind of launch period for my masterminds, and today was just a bit of outreach, and 4 people have dropped in. So there we go.
That's so great. Congratulations.
Yeah, it feels really, really good. I'm going to relish in that this weekend for sure.
Absolutely. What kind of work do you do?
So I call myself a quantum transformation and business coach. My business coaching mantra is spirituality meets strategy. And the strategy part is very much around visibility strategy. So prior to being a coach, I worked in communications, so PR, marketing. I basically, one of my superpowers is helping women in business get seen and heard through the messaging piece, and then secondary to that, kind of having the confidence, building the self-belief and the confidence to actually be visible, because they're two kind of different things. And then the spirituality piece is energetics, self-discovery, and all the juicy things that, you know, we have to explore in order to, you know, become the leader that we desire to be. So I sort of see it as like embodied expansion. You know, it's very regulated, very grounded. I train in a lot of different shamanic work. So I kind of use this grounding in order to rise. And the strategy piece is almost like the masculine, and then the spirituality tends to be more of the feminine and the exploration. So yeah, it's really delicious, Emily. It's really delicious work.
I love that so much. And I think it sounds very similar to the type of work that I do as well. Maybe, I mean, I don't have as much focus on visibility, but just that the strategy and spirituality very much resonates, because it's rarely just that the strategy is broken and that the energetics are spot on.
Exactly. And I always see it's like there's, you know, when you're looking at those two specific things at the same time, like it's a lot easier to get it right.
Right. Yeah. It's like, if you want to be more visible, it's probably not that your throat chakra is open and you feel totally confident in your leadership and you just don't have the right strategy. Probably the reason that it's not working is because you're actually scared about what it's going to mean for you. And are you going to risk your belonging? Are you going to be judged? Is it safe? are you good enough?
Yeah.
And it's like, we have to address those things.
Yeah, exactly. One of the, it's interesting. I work with women at different stages of business. So across the 3 masterminds, so kind of early stage, scaling to 6 figures, and then 6 to multi-6. And that also what comes up for people at those different stages of business is really different, right? So in the beginning, it is like a lot of my friends follow me. And because I've now, gone from working in corporate to being a coach or a nutritionist, I'm worried about what they're going to think of me. It's like, what's my mum going to say when she sees this post? Because, it's different to kind of how I used to be. And I mean, you're human, and that is a real life threat, right? Like that people are going to judge you. And so, that eases off, I think, by that middle stage. And then it's really about refining that message and becoming a thought leader. And then at 6 to multi-6, pretty much you're down with it. And it's about, like, for a lot of my clients, it's like, right, how am I going global with this? I want a book. I want, I want to build that legacy piece. So it's beautiful. It's a beautiful journey, but it does look different at every stage. And, not everyone, I always say this, is like, not everyone's a born performer, and there can be a lot of like, be more visible, just do more reels. And you're like, that's going to support, the algorithm, but it's also, it's not always the thing that's going to support your regulation.
Right.
So,
right.
Yeah.
And like creating the kind of content that you actually love and that feels more effortless for you.
Yeah, totally. I did quite a bit of those pointy reels in the beginning when reels came out. And then I was like, you know what? This is not for me. This is just not my thing. And now I'm like, I do the 90-second speaking ones because they're easy for me to do. They feel effortless. I feel magnetic doing them. You've got to make it work for you.
Yeah, that's how I feel too. Like I've been having so much fun on TikTok, which never did I think that was a channel that I was going to be playing on or doing anything with. And it's like, no, actually just face to camera, talking, sharing something is so easy for me. And then having someone else or even myself translate that into the written word is easier than if I had to write it to begin with.
Yeah, interesting. Really interesting. And it's, it's like I just said to you, before we hit record, it's like, I can't get this wrong.
Yeah.
Like when you're speaking, it's like, even if you don't quite get to the thing you want to say, it's still relevant and it's going to land in the heart of one person. And that's ultimately what we're doing, right? It's all about that, the power of one. So yeah.
Yeah. So what did the journey look like for you? Did you go from corporate to entrepreneurship yourself?
Yes, I did so it must have been about 27, 28. It's about 10 years ago. I was working, classic story, PR director, great salary, just bought my first home, big team of 9, and was like, ticked all the boxes. It's not feeling like I thought it was going to feel. And I'd always been interested in wellness, nutrition, yoga specifically. And I decided to leave the corporate job and go freelance, which meant that I had the time to kind of explore the studying that I wanted to explore. And I trained as a nutritionist, and actually, so my first kind of coaching role really, or role as a coach, was intuitive eating and living. I studied as I say, nutrition, struggles with food myself when I was younger. So that kind of intuitive eating area really, resonated with me.
Yeah.
But I quickly realized, in working with clients, that like how they were eating had nothing to do with food. It was all about their life.
Yeah.
Were they supported in their relationships? Did they like their jobs? What were their friendships like? Were they living their values? It was all the life stuff that was impacting how they were eating. So I did an online coaching course, and I just studied for 3 years. So I was like, I just want to kind of feel into the basics here. And that was, that was my practice, was born. And so it was intuitive eating and living. And then I wrote a book on that, and that was published, was it 4 years ago? And by that point, I started to get a lot of people reaching out like, hey, do you do business coaching? Because your business is like booming. You're so good, your content's so good. And I started piecing some things together and thought, well, actually, I've got this whole 15-year career working in communications, and I love words and I love women and I love entrepreneurship. So I could blend those three things. And that's kind of how I started the journey into business coaching. And I've just been refining it ever since. And yeah, I'm just at this stage right now where just things feel really solid and really good. And yeah, I love what I do. Really love what I do.
Yeah. I can feel that. So I want to dive into kind of the money journey. And, I'm curious to know, going from a well-paid corporate salary, which feels so safe, right, to freelancing and then into entrepreneurship, did that bring up your money stories? Was there anything that felt all of a sudden like, what charging this when it's my rates versus what the company pays feels so different?
Yeah, totally. I think what was interesting when I first went freelance is I actually worked for one company, and she sort of paid me exactly what I was being paid, when I was in kind of 9 to 5. And then when I shifted, from there into, so actually what I started, how my business started was doing food delivery for photo shoots. So I was like really into like kind of vegan and very healthy food at the time. And what was so fascinating there is that obviously you'd like bill for a job and then they'd be like, oh, it's a, 30-day payment term or 90-day payment term, when it was like a big company like Adidas. And I was like, well, hold on a minute, like I'm not a cash rich business.
Right.
And so I really had to kind of, just get really sharp on cash flow. And it's funny, like everything always landed. I had so many times I was like, I'm not going to be able to pay my mortgage. And, something would come in and land. And so I feel like that kind of trust in the universe was a big journey there. But, one of my biggest stories is sort of spending before the money's even arrived. Like I've earmarked how it's going to be spent and I spend it. And entrepreneurship has, really brought that, to my attention in huge ways where, you have to pay, well, in the UK, you have to pay VAT and then you have to pay tax, of course, so it's kind of, you need the money for that. And so there's definitely been a journey of allowing overflow, like having that money there and allocating it and keeping it. Because for me, my money story was like, oh, it's here, I've got to get rid of it. Oh, it's here, I've got to get rid of it. And it really has, it forced me in a really, force is quite a strong word, but, it's got me really feeling into trust, trusting myself. So yeah, it's a wild ride.
And I'm curious, like for you, when you started to identify that story, like, isn't that interesting that it always works out just in the nick of time, but I never just have enough money in the account to cover it in advance? Like, what were some of the tools and resources that you used to start changing that for yourself?
So I created like a whole load of pots. So, when I take money out of the business account to put it in my personal account, I then allocate that money into pots. So I got really intentional on like how I personally wanted to spend the money that I earned. So, big value of mine is like freedom and adventure. I love to travel. It's really, really important to me. So having money in that pot meant that, it was allocated. The same with food, mortgage, all of those, all of those things. And then in the business, again, just kind of creating those pots, allocating that money and just becoming super aware of when, let's say I'd get that pay in full payment, actually just allowing it, just sitting with it. And then the next day, checking in with it, like, oh, you're still there. Okay. And you're really safe to just be there. And I'm not going to spend you because I don't need to spend you. Thank you for being there. So it was this sort of very active and intentional, relationship that I started building to overflow versus, oh, it's in. So great. I can spend that now. It's like, oh, actually, what would it feel like to just allow myself to have money sat there in pots? Definitely been a process, but over time, it's enabled me to feel much safer.
I love that. And you shared with me earlier too, that, when you have a process that you go through when a payment comes in, and what you do with that in your body and your visualizing. Do you want to share that with us?
Yes. So Stripe always notifies me of a payment coming in. It's typically around like 8:30 in the morning. Yeah, between 8 and 9. And that's always the time that I'm on my morning walk. I've either dropped off my daughter at school at 8:15, and I co-parent, so I don't have her every week, but I'm always out, and on that walk with the dog by about, 8:15. And so when I see that notification, like I'll always stop. I'll always be in nature. So I'm always in that space of connection with, with Pasha Mama and spirit. And I just feel it. I just sort of feel the energy of money coming into my being, in my field, in my body. And I'll often place my hands on my heart and just be like, thank you, thank you, thank you. Yeah, thank you, thank you, thank you. It's giving it space. Ultimately, I think so often everything in this life is so fast paced, and it's like on to the next, and then we hit that win, and it's like on to the next. And what I've learned for me is creating space around things, to let them integrate, to let it land. So that's what I'll kind of do daily, and then I check in with my finances every single day. I check in with my bank account. I check in with my spreadsheet. And then, every single week I'll give, my intimate relationship with money some time. And maybe, Money and I will go on a date, and I'll look at what's come in, individually, and where it's come from, and think about those people. And, so it's been a very kind of active and very intentional kind of tool that I've developed over time.
Yeah, that's so beautiful. And I very much resonate and practice similar things. It's like, how long can we sit in the satisfaction or the joy or the excitement or the gratitude of that payment? And it doesn't have to be a big payment.
Yeah.
Like, I think that's sometimes where people get it wrong, is it's like, oh, but this was just like a $20. So what?
Yeah. Yeah. I give the same level of excitement and attention to like $1, like $1,000 or $7,000. And, it's, what you focus on expands. So keep focusing on all of those small things. All of those small things are adding to, the bigger things. They're all equally important to me,
Yeah. Yeah. I'm curious, in your work around visibility, do you see connection between money and people's like identity and thought leadership and their desire to be visible? Like, have you noticed any specific wounds that need to be healed around money in order for them to step into more visibility? Or what does that relationship look like?
I think the kind of overarching running themes is always about receiving, so whether it's receiving wealth or whether it's receiving, praise, or it's receiving eyes on your work, like it all comes from that, that same place. So if you have a challenge with receiving, the likelihood that's going to show up in your ability to be visible, because, it's like, oh, but it's not, whether it's not safe or, there's a fear there. So I would say, yeah, it definitely shows up. I suppose one of the big things is that ability to truly claim what it is that you want. A lot of women will not feel safe to be visible because there's something about, but what does that mean about me? Like, will people think that, I'm, oh my God, you're reminding me, yesterday I was taking my daughter to school, and this woman was said to her child, like, stop looking in the car windows, you little tart. And I was like, oh, heart shattered. I just thought, don't love yourself too much. Okay. Like, that's ultimately what she was saying. Don't love yourself. Don't love yourself too much. And it's that similar thing, like, it's not safe for me to be visible, because what would that potentially mean about me, that I want to be seen, that I desire to have eyes on me. And that's a big thing, I mean, I'm a double Leo, so I'm kind of like, I'm all right with
You're like, there's no such thing as too many eyes.
Yeah. But, interestingly, I'm a very quiet person. I don't need a lot of, I'm not someone who would have like a big party, or, I don't like eyes on me in that way. So actually the way that I allow that kind of Leo energy to come through is in my work, but actually behind the scenes, and that's also, I think, where there can be some confusion sometimes. It's like, oh, well, if I'm confident, I'm able to be visible. And it's like, well, actually, that, of course, we're human. There's, many complex layers, to being visible. But yeah, so sorry, I went off on a tangent there, but yeah.
No, I like the tangent. I mean, I'm actually curious if you feel like maybe there's like 3 common sort of visibility blocks that you often see in your work. And if you can just sort of name them and guide us through, maybe at a high level, some of the work that you take your clients through to heal those visibility blocks.
Yeah. So the first, I'm going to kind of almost like take it through the stages. I think at that earlier stage of business, it's, I don't know what to say, and I'm worried I'm going to get it wrong. So really it's a case of like getting comfortable with simply showing up and sharing what is alive for you that day, without thinking it's got to mean this, or without meaning, thinking it's got to be perfect. It's like a case of just keep showing up every day. And I always say, repetition builds that habit. So the way that I'll often say, to clients is, why don't you do like a, almost like a intentional, like 12 days of, and then speak to a theme. And that way you're going to, give yourself time to, really tune in on what that's going to look like. You're going to prep for it, include some personal stories in there, because you can't get that. You can't get those wrong,
Yeah.
What were the 3 things that helped me go from A to B? Well, you can't get those wrong. So I think at that stage, that's kind of the block that I see. I think probably at that middle stage, I think that's where the bigger wounds can kind of often show up, the self-belief, or the not enoughness. I call kind of not enough, like the universal belief. I think, everyone has felt that at some point. And so it's really an opportunity to go much deeper and really look at like, that thought leadership piece. What is it that you want to be known for, and what has got to be dissolved in order for you to fully step into that? And I feel like there's a bigger shedding at that stage, because, that's required for you to liberate yourself from, those blocks, to be able to fully step into the leader that you desire to be. And, we're speaking thought leadership, but I actually think that's relevant to, being a leader, and like really that self-leadership piece. And then I think, to be honest, at the kind of later stage, by that point, there's very much, been there, done that. And that's more of a kind of really refining, that message. And, it's almost like, what you want to be known for. So how are you now going to really speak that far and wide? And yeah, I mean, it's interesting. I don't tend to find, anyone at that level is like, oh, I felt really difficult showing up today. It's,
right.
Because you've practiced it, you've lived it, you become it, you are it,
Yeah.
I think the sort of middle scaling to 6 figures, you're becoming the living embodiment of your work, and by, that later stage, it's like you are the true living embodiment of your work. And, you are in the beginning, but you're still finding, your feet with it, and you're finding your voice, and, so yeah.
Yeah, it's like the caterpillar's journey. And when you start and you're the caterpillar, you're like, I don't know where this is going. I can't see the butterfly. I can't even really see like turning into jelly inside of a cocoon yet either. So where is this happening? And then it's just trusting that, like, if you keep living and breathing and existing and showing up, the transformation will happen. And at a certain point, it will become evident. Right.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's that keep moving forwards. Like in the beginning, you're moving forwards and doing all of the things. You're networking, you're trying masterclasses, and then you're trying group programs, and then you're doing you're trying all the things to see what fits. And then you're kind of, making that bit more concrete. And then you'll typically have like your core offer in the middle. And then it's like, right, well, how am I going to scale on that? And by that, that that third piece, that kind of, that third layer, again, it's constant refining. And, I have, and I think there's more of a trust in the breadcrumbs that you're following. Like, I'm just thinking about a client this week who's like, yeah, I've decided I'm not going to do that launch because it just doesn't feel aligned. And where maybe kind of at that early mid stage of business, that would be a massive thing. I think, as you've developed and grown into that leadership, you're kind of much more able to be like, yeah, it's not aligned, so I'm going to let it go, and I don't need to make it mean anything, and let's move on. So I love it. It's such a delicious journey. And I say that, but of course we're human. And so sometimes I'm like, oh God, I'm really in the downward spiral on this thing. I catch myself doing it, but I suppose it's much easier for me now to kind of, catch it, right? Be aware of it and be able to move through it.
Absolutely. And actually, I'd love to expand on that concept as it relates to money. One of the questions that I want to start asking all of my guests is like, when does money still feel hard to you? Or like, where does it still feel hard? Because I think sometimes there is this feeling of like, I've achieved this certain level now. And it's like, you've just had a killer day. You've received a lot more money today than many people will receive in a month or multiple months. And that probably doesn't mean that there aren't ever moments of time or certain situations where money feels hard to you. So can you just share, when does it feel hard and what do you do in those situations?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I feel like money still feels hard for me when I'm navigating the bigger stuff. Like, I just sold my property in December with a view to purchase a flat, and we don't need to live in a 4-bed house because I basically live alone and then with a 5-year-old. And so I wanted to free up some cash to be able to kind of, use the wealth that I've built on other stuff. And that was like big decisions. And I had this whole process where it just looked like I wouldn't be able to get a mortgage for various reasons. And it was really like, it brought up a lot of shame. Like, I'm seen as this successful business owner, and, I've got all this money, and, my income is good. But the way that they were looking at things, and for various, I won't go into the detail, and also, the market here in the UK is kind of really dire right now. And so a lot of lenders are just like, it's a no. It was really hard. Yeah. And it was actually, I would say it ended up being a really beautiful process, because I just had to allow my ego to fully dissolve. It was such like a death experience. And I've been beautifully rebirthed in the sense that I'm like, actually, this doesn't matter. And it's making me think about building wealth in a different way. Instead of like all my money in that pot, it's like, actually, if I were to have money in 3 or 4 different pots to start building a passive income, well, yeah, okay, well, what does that get to look like? Yeah. So, money feels harder in a different way. I feel like there's more responsibility, but I've really allowed myself to reframe that responsibility piece to responsibility gives me freedom. In having this money, it's actually enabling me to create a different life. Not just for me, but create a different life for my daughter. So it definitely still shows up. Even today, I sort of caught myself, okay, so that means that these payments are going to come in, and, am I going to have enough next month? Like that sort of, again, it's like, of course, it will always show up, if you're going to make that big payment. And then another way in which actually I've worked on that overflow piece is, allowing myself to choose things like payment plans, even with things like my tax. Like when I pay tax, it's like, actually, this would just feel really good to just pay it off monthly versus paying that massive sum, which can trigger the part of me that, believes that I can't hold money. Right. So there's, different ways that I've kind of, worked through the way in which it feels hard. But
yeah, thank you so much for sharing that. I really feel that it's going to resonate so much with listeners, because it's true. It just doesn't matter what level we're at. It unlocks different things. and it can trigger different things, or it can make us feel a different way. And it doesn't mean that there's something wrong with us, or that we haven't done the money work, or whatever.
Yeah. And what we attach meaning to when it comes to money.
Yeah.
You know, like I was so like, I mean, home is one of my core values. Like I created, you know, before I sold my property, a beautiful home. I love interiors. Like it's such a kind of expression or space for expression for me. And so like, oh, you know, that's been taken away and you're going to probably have to rent for a bit. I'm like, oh, whoa, what does that mean about me? And again, it's like giving me the opportunity to dissolve that identity. And ultimately what I got to is like all of this stuff around me is more. Everything I need is here in my vessel, in my heart. You know, it was, such a delicious journey of like shed. Yeah. And actually it's given me a new found appreciation for like the things that naturally bring me joy, like the sky and the earth and the sea that I see every day. But made me, I've got like a large sum of money sat in my account right now. And there's not one part of me that's like, we're just going to spend it. Right. You know, it's just sat there and I'm like, hey, you're really nice to have around and I don't need to spend you. You know, I've been almost given the opportunity to learn what I truly needed to learn in this experience, which is look at you, you can hold it.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Is there any dots that you've been able to connect between the ways money has felt challenging to you as an adult and what you witnessed as a child, either how your parents were with money or how money felt in your household?
Yes, 100%. So a lot of kind of what I just explained was certainly a money story of my dad that I'd held on to, and I knew that it was not my story. So my dad was like a businessman, very smoke and mirrors though, right? So presented as having a lot of money. Behind the scenes, there was not a lot of money. When he left my mum, like 6 months old, he had racked up credit cards in her name. And so my mum was left with like 20 grand's worth of debt. And when I met him later on in life, sadly, he passed away kind of a few years after I met him. But again, it was kind of like, you know, the showcase of money, but my body was never fully in trust that it was all really true. And so I think that's a big part of what I've just, you know, gone through and experienced. Like, this gets to be true for you. You know, like that's his story. You get to build wealth. You get to look like you've got wealth and actually have it, you know?
Yeah.
So it's really shown up. And then on my mum's side, I don't ever really remember, you know, experiencing anything when it comes to money. I mean, she was a single parent of 3 kids. So I definitely know that I got my work ethic from her. I think there was definitely a part of me that like, this has to be hard. Right. I've had to do quite a bit of work on receiving money through like passive avenues. So, you know, my evergreen, I've got a whole page of self-leadership, and, you know, it's been a process of kind of like, I actually get to receive that because, you know, I've done the work. I did the program. It's now there. We've repurposed it into a course, and there's a part of me that's like, but I mean, it's just too easy, right? You know? But surely I need to work for it. Surely I need to, you know, shall I add a 1-to-1? You know, should I add a 1-to-1 to all of them? And it's like, no, that's enough. It's more than enough. So yeah, I suppose, you know, that's probably what has come through on that side.
You know, it's interesting too, because my husband was raised by a single mom, and he didn't have any siblings. And he's like, I feel like I really don't have a lot of like stories about money. And he's like, we were poor. Like there were definitely a lot of things that I just like knew we couldn't have. He's like, I just don't feel like I remember making a lot of meaning out of that. And so, It's curious to me. I think every household's a little different, and it's obviously hard to like go back in time and really dissect it. But I do wonder when it is a single parent, and so therefore there isn't like money conversation happening between two grownups in the household. If that doesn't really change how much of the story you're absorbing as a kid.
I think there's a lot of truth in that. I mean, what is it that like, couples argue about the most, like money and sex? Right. And so, my mum was having, conversations about neither of those things. Right. So I think there is a lot of truth in that. And actually, what it's given me is such a sense of independence. I could not. In fact, I think my worst nightmare is not being financially independent. Like I couldn't have it where it was like, can I buy that, please? Like that, that's just not, that's just not me. And so, I feel like a part of my relationship to money and how I live is also how I'm modeling it to other women. Like actually it's good for you. It's safe for you to have your own income, to create your own pots. And, it's really powerful.
Yeah, I love that. So you've healed the smoke and mirrors thing. You feel like the outer environment can kind of match whatever is happening behind the scenes, and like the inner environment too, right? Like feeling that inner abundance. Is there like a next level of wealth or abundance that you've been like playing with or calling in for yourself?
Yes, there is 500,000 this year, which kind of landed like in the last couple of weeks, but we are almost halfway to meeting what we made last year. So wow. That's totally possible. I actually dipped in revenue last year, which was intentional. I didn't want to work as much, and I launched quite a lot of smaller, kind of lower price point and what I call like builder offers to get to my core offer, knowing that there was going to be 3 masterminds instead of 1 in September. So it kind of meant that, there was less revenue in that kind of, January to September timeline. And then we saw a massive increase from September to December. And now this year we're building on that. So yeah, I think like 500,000 is delicious.
Yeah, I love that. $500,000 a year.
$500,000 a year. Yeah. Well, pounds. I mean, in dollars, that's what, maybe 700
even more, right? Significantly more.
Yeah.
Okay. So for context, how much cash did you bring in 2022?
202,000
pounds.
Yeah.
I want to do the math on that, but I don't know what the exchange rate is right now. Do you know?
No.
I think it's at least, let me think, because I bought something from someone in the UK for 2,000 pounds and it came out to like 2,400 US. So it must be like 20% more. So if you did 202,000 pounds, I'm doing the math for our listeners here. So that way we can put some context on it. So that was around like $240,000. Yeah. So we had a very similar year in 2022, because I think I ended at like 233,000 cash in my coaching business.
Yeah.
And you were around 240,000. So, yeah, I'm right there with you in terms of like just feeling like, oh yeah, double. Sure.
It's totally possible. And also that's cash received. So
yeah, that's
not, total sales. And what we've managed to do, in that process is, we've already got 90,000 pounds coming into the business in 2023. Right. So, you can see where my calculation of like, can we hit 500? Well, yeah, I mean, we're a fifth of the way there. Like, so, it's, I mean, I do love a payment plan. I do love a stacking of income.
I do too. I do too. Like, I'm here for the pay in fulls, but I would take, if I had to choose one or the other, I would always choose payment plans to be receiving. Because I just love knowing like, oh, great. I start the month already knowing that all of this money is coming in, and it feels really good and it feels really safe and sustainable in my body.
Yeah, exactly. It's so, and it's that ping of that Stripe payment for me. I'm like, wow, I pretty much feel like I make money every day, which is great. And as I said, as we discussed, it's like sometimes it's £22 and sometimes it's 2022,
Totally. I'm like, more chances to celebrate the receiving.
Yeah.
Like I ran a program at the end of last year where I offered weekly payment plans too. And some people took it. And it was so fun because I was just like celebrating them constantly. Like I celebrated their yes so many times because I think it was like, ended up being like 17 payments or something like that. And it was a blast. I loved it.
Yeah, so good. It's so good. And, I love that, like celebrating their yes. Someone paid me today and did pay in full. And she said, paying you is how I want my clients to feel when they pay me. And I was like, that is exactly the kind of intention that we're going to be playing with, Laura. Thank you very much.
Totally. I feel that too. One of my clients who paid in full at the beginning of this year, I didn't know this at the time, but she just posted on Instagram this really vibey picture. And she's got like her YSL purse and she's got like a candle lit or something. And then she's got her laptop there and my payment screen, my checkout page is on there. And it was like, she just had this whole vibe for herself and she sent it at like 11:11 and it was an $11,111 payment. And like, she made it mean something so special and created so much intention around it that it's like, yes. Yeah. I'm so happy for you. I'm so happy for me. Like, I love that was how that energetic and financial exchange happened.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
It is.
Actually, I think it's creating the space around things, like creating the ritual. Like every time I pay my VAT, my tax, like I create a ritual around it where it's like, I do like the incense and like, thank you. And I feel into, a lot of people get funny about when they have to pay their tax. And I'm like, it's representative of what you've received, and we are always in a space of, well, the law of receiving is that we are always, in a process of giving and receiving. So thank you for everything that I have received. And now, I'm going to give it to you.
Yeah.
Whether that's the tax man or your coach or, whoever, it's like you get to pass it forward.
Totally. Yeah. I mean, you want to pay 0 in taxes? You can do that. You just have to earn 0.
Yeah.
How does that feel?
Yeah.
Like otherwise you get to pay some taxes and that gets to be representative of how much you've received. Yay.
Yeah, exactly. And create a ritual around it so it feels really good doing it.
Totally. I love that so much. Well, you are just a wealth of wisdom. I love your vibe. And I have a feeling that everyone listening will want to connect with you too. So could you just share the best ways to connect?
Yes, absolutely. You'll probably find me playing more on Instagram and you can find me at Pandora Paloma _. My website is pandorapaloma.com. And the kind of only way, apart from one other container that I have to work with me this year, would be in my mastermind. So it would be pandorapaloma.com /masterminds. Nice and easy.
Beautiful. Well, thank you so much for being on the show. Any last parting words of wisdom for us?
Oh, yes. I'm going to give you what I wrote down today in my journal, which is, universe, show me how good it gets. Show me how good it gets. I played with that today. I texted my partner. I was like, I'm going to have a 10K day, babe. I sent him what I just shared. I was like, I'm going to have a 10K day. And he was like, okay, when you're done, like, doing your shares with the universe, you want to give me a call. And I did have a 21K day and, but I set the intention this morning, like, universe, like, show me how good it can get.
Yeah. I love that so much. I have a video on TikTok right now that is like my 5 tips for manifesting surprise money. And tip number 2 is when you wake up in the morning, say, universe, show me how good it gets, surprise and delight me. And so I've been doing that as well. And then it's wild because 2 days ago, I had like a surprise $444 payment that was just like on an evergreen program. Don't know the person. And then yesterday we get a random $25 check in the mail from a class action lawsuit that, who knows. Today woke up to a $22.22 payment. And it's like, yay! Yes, show me how good it gets.
Show me how good it gets. I am in the process of, letting go of the flat that I was going to purchase. I emailed the solicitor to say, hey, you're going to have to send me the final bill. We're not going to finish the journey together. They owe me £2,000.
Yes.
So that was like, universe, you just showed me again how good it can get. I don't owe you money. You owe me money.
Yeah, okay, my lawyer owes me money. You don't hear that very often.
I know, but I did request to show me how good it can get. So let me be surprised and delighted. Exactly.
Amazing. Okay. So everyone listening, go play with that. And when the universe shows up and surprise and delights you, you can tag me at makes.money, tag Pandora at Pandora Paloma _ on Instagram, and share your celebrations with us.
Yes.
Thank you so much for listening as always. And we'll talk to you soon. Bye. Okay. Pandora was amazing. Make sure that you follow her at Pandora Paloma _ I'm at makes.money. You can tag both of us. Let us know what your takeaways were from this show. Here are mine. Number 1, you can use payment notifications as a reminder just to pour into your relationship with money, like get into the feeling and circulating the gratitude in your body. Number 2, notice your money patterns. Am I always getting by just in the nick of time? Why is that? Now, by the way, this is a classic symptom of the disappearing money wound. So you can find out if you have that wound by taking my free quiz at moneywoundsquiz.com. And number 3, know that there will still be times when money feels scary at all levels of wealth. And takeaway number 4, visibility, power, wealth, identity work, they are also interconnected. And when you work on one, they all get better. Thank you so much for tuning into the show. I've got a great episode coming up with Sally Mildren. She is an incredible expert in the patient experience marketing space, and she is also one of my beloved clients. So I'm super excited for her to come on and share what's going on in her world. If you've been enjoying the show, please like, share, subscribe, leave a review. We love you. Thank you so much. Bye. Thank you so much for tuning in to today's show. Before you go, I have something fun to share. Now, when you leave a review of the podcast on Apple, Spotify, or YouTube, take a quick screenshot and send it to hi@emilywilcox.com. You'll be entered into a drawing to win a free one-on-one Voxer coaching day with me, and you help the show reach more new listeners. Such a win-win. I also invite you to follow me on Instagram at makes.money and to jump into my free Telegram community, The Money Club, which is linked in the show notes. Until next time, I'm sending you all the magic money vibes.